Apollo, all I desire is life and peace.
You expect us to...
Please don't send me back there. You have no idea what it's like.
When I'm done with you and your Starfleet, you'll be lucky to command a Gamma Scout.
I'm about to violate a direct order from Starfleet Command.
What the devil's going on, Mr. Spock?
It appears you were temporarily interchanged with counterparts from a parallel universe.
Status report.
Android vessels have entered orbit, sir. They're charging weapons.
Lock onto their lead ship and fire.
Captain?
I said fire!
I am the captain's woman.
You are, aren't you?
Join me. Together we shall be the architects of our own future.
Our sister world opposes our desire to join the Federation. They will stop at nothing to prevent it.
Target acquired, Captain.
We're losing weapons, Locke.
Captain.
Fire phases. Why are you here? What do you want with the Captain?
Humans bury feelings of heartbreak and loss. We lock them away.
What places do you think it is?
Intelligence.
Wars on overload!
This procedure is not successful. We'll lose all 3 of you.
The tissue damage is severe. Fire on the ship, We're not. What can you do here?
We're gonna have to amputate below the knee.
Signal all decks. We've been boarded.
Lucy dares to hide!
Whatever these pulses are, it's making it impossible to think clearly. It's getting harder to manage the anger.
You don't belong in that uniform.
So, Commodore, to what do we owe this pleasure?
The crew of the Hood has been lost.
Enterprise, we've got a containment failure. Get us out of here!
Inaccurate. Data in error.
The computer would appear to disagree with you, Commander.
I'd prefer not to discuss the matter, sir.
Their deflector screens have activated. It's impossible to get a look. We can't bring them back.
Jim, he's you.
That's impossible. The bridge is empty. It was filled with dead crewmen the last time I was here.
Are you even a captain? When you have no crew?
One man, 2 minds.
One of those minds was tampering with the other.
The moon's destabilizing, sir. We're experiencing undertow from both singularities.
Captain, the Klingon vessel has just entered the system.
Vic Mignogna, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Russell. It's such a pleasure to join you.
Vic, who the hell do you think you are casting yourself in the role of Captain Kirk?
Well, I think probably the bottom line foundational truth to that answer to that question is that I'm just a 10-year-old kid who fell in love with Star Trek, and Captain Kirk was his father figure and role model, and so I loved that show, and now 40-some years later, I'm using the film production and acting skills that I've been developing over my entire life to pay tribute and homage to the show that inspired me so much when I was a boy.
Star Trek fans are particularly protective of the product. Has Star Trek Continues been met with overwhelming criticism or negativity?
No, actually, I was quite amazed at the response. As you know, there have been dozens and dozens of fan productions, Star Trek fan productions over the years, all of varying levels of quality. But I made this purely as my love letter to Star Trek, and I only intended to make the first episode thinking, well, I just want to be able to say that I got to do this one time in my life. And we put the first episode out. I funded the first episode, and along with a few friends, and we didn't ask for anybody else's money. And we put it out there, and the response was unbelievable. We got such a positive response. People actually absolutely loved it, and that's why we decided to make more. So no, the initial response was not negative in any way. It was anything but, actually.
It's unbelievable how accurate you've done it. From the lighting to the music. In any way, shape, or form, have Paramount come down on you and said, listen, this is too spot on. You can't do this.
Again, I'm going to say no. They've not, quote unquote, come down on us in any way. Early on, we were asked to make a few changes to our website and our social media, mostly because it was so accurate to the original. But no, we have. I think CBS and Paramount understand the level of tribute and reverence and love that we have for the original series. We've not sought to capitalize on it. We've not sought to make any money from it. We've not defamed it. We've not criticized it or in any way cast any negative light on their property. And so we've not had any negative communications with the people that own Star Trek in any way.
Considering you have a good relationship with CBS Paramount, why are there only 3 episodes left in the series?
Well, that's a sad question, an unfortunate reality. CBS has always been very, very gracious to fan films, allowing them to exist and share their love of Star Trek under one very clear condition, and that is you're not allowed to profit personally. You're not allowed to make money from somebody else's property, and everybody pretty much understands that. Makes sense. But a couple of years ago, another production came along, and they raised a lot of money under the guise of planning to make a Star Trek feature film. And not only was the film never made, but they profited personally off of it. They paid themselves salaries. They started rented a building that they were planning to rent out to other productions for profit, and flew around the world promoting a movie that didn't exist, and just spent the money on other things besides that for which the fans gave it. And when that line was crossed after all these years and many different productions, CBS basically said, you know what? Enough is enough. We've got to step in here and protect our license. And so they filed a lawsuit against that production. And what came out of that lawsuit were some fan film guidelines. Unfortunately, even though we were not the culprits and we're not the subject of that, and neither were, all of the other productions, these guidelines basically made it pretty clear that, we probably were going to have to finish it up sooner rather than later. The good news was that we had already raised the money to shoot our last few episodes. We had originally planned on doing 13. We had enough money donated from fans to do 3 more. So that's what we decided to do. We are our nonprofit C3, a 501c3 official nonprofit. We're the only Star Trek production out there that is. And so given the fact that we are an official nonprofit, given the fact that the money was already donated before the guidelines were in place, given the fact that we had always intended to finish the series, we weren't just going to do it, ad nauseum forever. We had always had an end in sight. So we just kicked into high gear to finish up the episodes that we had been funded for, and our intention is to release our last few episodes this year and be done. But the good news is that we've actually done what we had set out to do. what we were funded by the fans to do. We have always and continue to use what was donated for exactly the purpose that it was donated. And you know, we are very optimistic that we're going to be able to finish and release our last few episodes all this year. But that's why we're stopping, and that's why we're doing 11 instead of 13. It's unfortunate. It's very sad. A lot of people are having to pay for the mistakes that were made, but at least we're getting to finish the series.
Was there not originally supposed to be 13 episodes as opposed to 11?
Yes, there were. And when the guidelines came out, my assessment of the situation was, we need to finish our series up. We need to finish up. We can't continue to do these, because the last thing in the world I would ever want to do, Russell, is spit in the face of the people that created Star Trek. The people that own Star Trek, you know, I have tremendous respect for them. We have always supported and encouraged and stood behind CBS even when they filed the lawsuit. We were very, very clearly and very public about saying, look, CBS owns Star Trek, and they have the right to protect and defend their license however they see fit, and we support them. But when this happened, it became very clear to me that if we tried to continue as if nothing had changed and tried to do 13 episodes, that could very well be perceived as being very disrespectful and combative toward the people that own Star Trek, and that's not what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do was finish the series. I wanted us to do what had never been done, Russell, and that is complete the original series of arguably the most iconic TV show in history that was just canceled, to actually give it a series finale. And in my mind, that's iconic, and that is what we set out to do, and that's what we've done.
Have the original 13 episodes all been written?
No, we had not written all 13.
Okay, so you haven't had to scrap two shows together?
No, we haven't. No, we have not. I will tell you that there are a lot of really great writers out there who had wanted to write for us and had wanted to submit scripts, but you know, when they wrote me and said, I'd like to submit a script, I would write them back and say, thank you so much, we're honored by your interest, but unfortunately we're winding our series up and we already have our last 3 episodes or last 4 episodes.
So do you personally consider these to be canonical?
Well, I mean, I don't have the authority to make them canonical, but I will tell you that as close as you can get to the creator, Gene Roddenberry, his son Rod has publicly stated on more than one occasion that if his dad were alive today, he would consider these canon. And I will tell you that it has been my desire and intention from the very beginning to honor the original series and to honor the original series spirit and its intent. You know, a lot of fan productions their idea of making a Star Trek fan production is to fight the Klingons and fire phasers and flip open communicators and beam down. And you know what? That's Star Trek at a very, very shallow level, at a very surface level. But if you really want to honor and recreate the original spirit of the original series, you need to tell endearing, thought-provoking, powerful stories of ethical questions and moral dilemmas and social questions. That's what made the original series great. That's why we still talk about them today, why they're still popular. And so if you're going to do something like that, you've got to have amazing stories, and you have to have actors to tell those stories. A lot of fan productions are fans. They're not necessarily actors or production people who know how to light a shot or or shoot a shot or edit or sound design. So when I endeavored to start Star Trek Continues, it was my endeavor to bring together people who not only shared a passion and love for classic Star Trek, but also knew what made classic Star Trek so endearing. And that's what we've endeavored to do.
Yeah, it's really about storytelling.
Yes. Story.
Those classic TOS Star Trek episodes were as good as The Twilight Zone.
Yes.
Or the short stories of Isaac Asimov.
Yes. I mean, there are millions of people around the world right now whose lives were changed. The entire trajectory of their lives was changed by Star Trek. And watching that show, it formed many of their feelings about humanity and goodness and ethics and morals and 1,000 different elements of someone's beliefs or personality or, morals and ethics and standards. And, that kind of thing is timeless. Human beings right now are exactly the same as they were in 1967. And they're exactly the same as they were in 1867. People are people, and we struggle with the same questions and the same dilemmas, and that's why Star Trek at 51 years old is as relevant today as it was when it was created. And that's why I think so many people have enjoyed and gravitated toward our series and embraced it in much the same way they did the original. We get hundreds of emails every day in our social media, Russell, from people telling us what episode 4 meant to them, or how much episode 6 spoke to them, or how they've begun to think differently because of episode 2, or how much something that we created impacted them. And that is beyond humbling. That is such a humbling privilege and honor for us.
I was so interested to learn that your favorite episode of Star Trek is one of my favorite episodes, top 5 for sure. Requiem for Methuselah.
Oh my gosh, right?
It's the best part of that is the reveal. I am Brahms. Oh, you're kidding.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I love that episode, and of course you did the sequel to it.
Well, I wouldn't call it so much of a sequel, but we did reference it. Yes, we referenced, Reyna and Spock, wiping out Kirk's memory. And you know why I love that episode so much? You may laugh, and I've sought to perpetuate this in my portrayal of Kirk. What I loved the most about Requiem for Methuselah was that you saw the flawed side of Kirk. You actually saw Captain Kirk at the end of that series actually express remorse and regret for how he behaved and what he did and said. I remember sitting there as a 12-year-old or however old I was when I first saw that episode and thinking, oh my gosh, the perfect, amazing, brave, heroic Captain Kirk is sitting in his quarters expressing out loud how ashamed he is of the way he behaved. And if only he could forget how foolish he acted. One of the things that I wanted to do with Star Trek Continues was make Captain Kirk more relatable. You know what I mean? Like make him more three-dimensional. In the original series, Kirk always came up with the solution. He always had the answers. He always saved the day. And while that is definitely part of the dynamic of the show, Shatner was even quoted in an article that I read years ago that had there been a reboot of the series, had they gone on and done Star Trek Phase 2 in the late 70s that they were planning on doing, even Shatner wanted to make Kirk more human, more flawed, to show people a character that they could relate to themselves. So that was something that really resonated with me about Requiem for Methuselah, and that was something that I have wanted to bring into Star Trek Continues.
Here's a question for you. When you portray James Kirk, are you portraying William Shatner playing James Kirk, or are you playing James Kirk?
I'm doing my best to pay tribute to the Kirk that everybody remembers. I mean, in my opinion, you know, I'm sure Chris Pine's a nice guy, but there's only one Captain Kirk, and it's Bill Shatner. And when I started this series, my desire was not to reinvent Captain Kirk. We don't need to reinvent Mr. Spock. You know what I mean? We don't need to realize all over again Dr. McCoy. I wanted people to feel like they were watching a continuation and perhaps even an evolution of the iconic characters that they loved so much. So my goal was to play the role in a way that would make people feel like they're watching the original Captain Kirk. And of course, let me say real quick, let me interject, I love Bill Shatner. Bill and I are good friends, and I would never, ever, 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 ever want anyone to think that I was spoofing him or doing a satire or a parody of him. So it was never my endeavor to do any of these stereotypical quirky things that comedians do when they imitate Captain Kirk, or that, you know, the satirical version of him. I don't think that's what he was like at all, and I don't think he would be as endearing and lovable a character if he was really the way that people kind of satire him to be. But I just wanted there to be enough of his personality and his delivery and his mannerisms. I wanted to incorporate enough of those into my performance that people just accept that this is the Captain Kirk that they grew up on and that they loved.
Why the change in the Doctors? The pilot episode had a different actor playing the Doctor, Dr. McCoy.
Absolutely. I'll tell you very simply. In our have you seen our vignettes? Have you seen the 3 vignettes we made?
No, just the full episodes.
Okay, well, we made 3 little vignettes before we released our first episode. We made 3 little 5-minute, roughly, vignettes introducing our crew, introducing these actors in these roles. And if you go back and look at those vignettes, you'll find them at www.StarTrekContinues.com. You would see Chuck Huber in the role of Dr. McCoy. He was always who I'd intended to play Dr. McCoy. And then, as misfortune would have it, less than a month before our first episode shoot, Chuck called me and said that he had had an emergency in his family and that he wasn't going to be able to make the shoot. And I thought to myself, doggone it, you know, I can't even get this thing off the ground. I can't even get the first, I can't even get the shoot off the ground, and suddenly I've got a conflict with one of my actors. So I had a good friend that I knew was a big Star Trek fan, and specifically a big fan of Dr. McCoy, named Larry Nemecheck. And a lot of people in the Star Trek world know Larry. And I contacted Larry and I said, Larry, I've got a bit of an emergency. My Dr. McCoy has dropped out. Do you have any acting experience? And he said, I do. And I said, well, I would really love it if you would come and join us and save the day. And Larry graciously stepped in and he played Dr. McCoy for the first episode. And then literally in the middle of the second episode, while we were shooting Lolani, Chuck Huber contacted me and said, hey, crisis averted. Everything is good. I'm so sorry I missed the first 2 episodes, but I'd love to come back and play McCoy. So from episode 3 on, it was the McCoy that I had always intended for it to be. But I do want to say Larry Nemecheck is still one of our creative coordinators and creative consultants on our episodes, and he is still a very, very dear friend of the production. He's a beloved part of our Star Trek Continues family, and still comes down to the shoots whenever we shoot an episode.
Why no comments allowed on the YouTube chat board?
I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't run that. I don't administrate it.
Okay, because comments are disabled on the YouTube chat.
Well, I think they're probably disabled for one of two reasons. Number one, because in order to perhaps encourage people to go join us on social media. We've got social media pages, and we've got Facebook and Instagram, and we've got plenty of places for people to comment on our episodes. So I would say one reason is probably to generate, to encourage people to go to those places. But I think maybe, without knowing for sure, I would have to check with my guy that runs the YouTube channel. I would dare say that we don't want to entertain haters. There are a lot of haters out there, Russell. It's very discouraging. It's very disheartening. People have no idea how much goes into making something like this. They don't have a clue on the planet how much work and time and love and sweat and blood and preparation goes into making one of these episodes. And even though 95% of the people out there love them and enjoy them, there is that 5% that literally feel like they have to criticize something in order to get noticed. They just have to hate something to validate their existence. They literally define themselves by what they're against. And I'm sad to say, Star Trek, there are people in the Star Trek world that are no different. They're hateful and critical, and it makes me wonder if they even know what Star Trek was about. It makes me wonder if they even liked Star Trek, at least what it was that Star Trek, the values and the attitudes that Star Trek promoted. But, I would say probably we have no desire to have people post hateful things. So if they want to do that, there are plenty of places for them to do it.
But not there.
But not on our YouTube channel, no.
Okay, sir, there are 3 episodes left.
Yes.
Will Khan, Harry Mudd, or Sarek make an appearance?
Nope.
Nope.
Nope. And from the press releases I've heard about Discovery, I think Discovery's got those covered. But I believe all 3 of them. Well, maybe not Khan, but I know that I've heard that Harry Mudd and Sarek are both going to be showing up. I think they made a press release about that and who's going to be playing them. But no, they are not.
Any old favorites returning?
I will tell you this, without wanting to make any spoilers. I will tell you that the last 3 episodes that we have already shot, that are to a large extent completed, are going to blow people's minds. I will tell you that you will see some familiar faces, and I won't go any further than that. And I will tell you that you are going to see things that you always wanted to see in the original series. In fact, I'll even go so far as to say you are going to see things that Gene Roddenberry always wanted to do with the original series, but never did. And I'm going to leave it that cryptic and not going to share anything else. But I will tell you that these last 3 episodes are powerful. They're exciting. They're very thought-provoking. Episode 9 is perhaps one of the most classic Star Trek episodes. I mean, thematically, one of the most powerful that we've ever done. And 10 and 11 are a 2-part series finale. And when I say series finale, I mean not just to our series, but to the original series of Star Trek. We are going to do what has never been done, and we are going to leave all of the characters where they were when the motion picture found them.
This is crazy ambitious, Vic.
Yeah.
It sounds like a lot of money. And how much money have you made from all of this?
Not a penny. How much money have we made?
How much money have you made, sir?
Oh, sir, not a penny.
Right.
In fact, listen to me very carefully, Russell. I have spent personally about $150,000 of my life savings to make this series a reality.
This is your gift to the Star Trek universe.
That is exactly right. I have often referred to this as my love letter to Star Trek. You know, some people with their extra money, you know, you pay your bills, right? You pay your bills, and then whatever's left, you use to do things you love. You take a trip to Hawaii. You buy a big screen TV. You get a new computer. You buy a video game. You whatever, go skiing. You use your additional income for the things that bring you joy, right? That you love. Well, Star Trek has brought me great joy and inspiration over the years, especially in my formative years. And I know that I'm not alone there. So I thought, what better way to spend some of my additional income than to give back to Star Trek just a little bit of all it has given me. And I know that there are thousands of people out there living vicariously through us. And so that's been my goal. And not only have I not taken any money, not only have none of us taken any money, but indeed have given lots in terms of dollars and in terms of our own work and talent and skill and artistic expertise in creating these episodes.
Another audience question here from Otaku Becky. She's actually in a picture with you and her.
She must be one of my dear anime fans.
She asks, what's the most challenging part of portraying Captain Kirk?
Well, thank you, Becky, for the question. I think the most challenging part was wanting to do honor and tribute to such an iconic role. You know, Russell, you and I and Becky and everybody out there can have fantasies and daydreams about things that we would love to do that we know in our rational minds we will never, ever, ever, ever do. You know what I mean? There are things that we imagine, what would it be like to do this? Or what would it feel like to do this? And the rational side of our brain goes, yeah, go ahead and fantasize all day, buddy. You will never, ever get the chance to do that. Well, if you'd have told me at 10 years old, or even 20 or 30 or 40 years old, that one day I would walk on to a perfect recreation of the Enterprise in a perfect uniform, surrounded by my friends, and that I would be playing the role of the character that I grew up loving and emulating so much, I would have laughed and said, I don't know what planet you're living on, but that will never happen. So I remember distinctly when I was standing in the turbo lift on the bridge, waiting for the doors to open and for me to walk out onto the bridge. I remember thinking, oh my God, this is daunting. Like, I have always dreamed of playing this role, but now I'm actually having to come through. You know what I mean? Now I actually have to deliver. And it was very scary. It was daunting because I love that character so much, and I love Bill Shatner so much, and I wanted it to be good. I wanted people to like it and to embrace it, and I wanted to pay proper respect to that character. So the hardest part was just realizing what an iconic role it is, and feeling the daunting weight of trying to play authentically such an iconic role.
So speaking of living out your fantasies, you've been able to dress up your wife, Michelle, in a Star Trek uniform, which...
Hey, I didn't have to force her to do it, man. She is as big a nerd as I am, and she wanted to do it. In fact, you know that she plays Dr. McKenna,
which is a created character, obviously.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the funny story behind that. When I was casting the show, I mean, Michelle is a great actress, and when I was casting the show, I said to her, "Okay, do you want to play Nurse Chapel? Do we want you to play Yeoman Rand?" And as we were thinking about it, Marina Sirtis, who played Counselor Troy in Next Generation, is a dear friend of mine. And Michelle always loved The Next Generation. That was the series she grew up on. And we started talking about what characters existed in the Next Generation universe that did not exist in the original series. And the obvious answer came up, well, every ship had a ship's counselor. Well, they didn't have one in TOS, so when did they initiate that program? So we decided we were going to make up a character that would be the first ever experimental ship's counselor. Starfleet experimenting with this program of putting a psychologist or a whatever ship's counselor on the ships. So we created Dr. Mckennah, and I got to tell you, one of the many things I am very proud of about Star Trek Continues is that we have created a character that in many, many people's minds has been accepted as part of the iconic cast of characters of Star Trek, which is no small task. And she has brought not only an amazing voice, not only a wonderful voice, but she's brought another strong female character into the Star Trek world, which is completely in keeping with the spirit and the sensibility of Star Trek. You know, we've heard stories about Nichelle Nichols, and we've heard stories that Nichelle tells herself about Dr. Martin Luther King encouraging her to stay with the show when she was thinking of quitting because she was the first black female character on television that wasn't a maid. And Star Trek pioneered that. But there weren't a ton of other strong officer females in TOS. Now, of course, there were more in Next Gen and on, and Deep Space Nine, obviously, with Janeway, but not in TOS. So I consider it one of our many great accomplishments that we were able to create our own character that was able to bring some of that to TOS.
And I'm sure you meant to say Voyager with Janeway.
Yes, I meant to say, Deep Space Nine and Voyager and Enterprise, of course, Voyager with Janeway, right.
I interviewed Lawrence Krauss once. Have you ever consulted with Lawrence Krauss on the physics of Star Trek?
I have not.
How do you maintain the continuity of physics for the program?
Well, we've got a lot of smart people, very smart people. I mean, Grant Imahara plays Sulu. He's a very smart guy. Larry Nemecheck, like I mentioned before, a very smart guy.
Isn't that security officer, isn't he a Menson?
James Kerwin. James Kerwin, who is one of our directors and co-producers, is in Mensa. Yes, very smart guy. I tell you what, James Kerwin is amazing. He and I work on post-production. I mean, I edit the episodes, and we'll be in the middle of working on a script. Like we'll be preparing a script for shooting. And James will call me and say, such and such, where Sulu says such and such to Chekhov, that's really not scientifically accurate. It should say this. And he is one of the several voices in our production that just knows their stuff and helps keep us on point as much as possible.
Would you ever consider recreating TNG playing Captain Picard?
Never. Not in a million lifetimes. Not in a million lifetimes. I love Patrick Stewart. I mean, he did an amazing job. But TOS was my Star Trek. TOS, and you know, I've become very dear friends with, like I said, Marina and Brent Spiner and Michael Dorn and John Delancey and LeVar and Jonathan Frakes. I mean, I've done a lot of shows. I don't know if you know, I'm a voice actor by profession, and I've done so much voice acting work that I do a lot of event appearances at Comic-Cons and signing events and anime conventions, and I've become friends with a lot of these Star Trek royalty, and I love them to death, and we laugh and go out to dinner and have a great time, but even they know that TOS was my Star Trek. That was the one that impacted me so much when I was young, and so no, I don't have any dreams or aspirations of recreating any other Star Trek.
And Brent Spiner's okay to get along with, eh? I've always heard tales to the contrary.
Well, you hear tales like that about most celebrities. You know, and I would say, you know what? They're just like anybody else. They're just like you or me. If you catch us on a bad day, we may come across like a real jerk. You know what I mean? All of us are personable or less personable or more personable, depending on which day you catch us, right? Or what moment you catch us. But I love Brent. Brent's very funny, sharp guy, talented guy. I've done a lot of events with Brent and love him to death. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story. Just last week, Michelle and I watched an episode of TNG called The Offspring. And I loved the episode, and when we got done watching the episode, I picked up my phone and I texted Brent immediately, and I said, "Hey man, just watched an episode of The Offspring and wanted to tell you that you were awesome." And he wrote me back, "Thanks so much, Vic, exclamation point. I'll look forward to seeing you soon." So, I mean, he's a good guy. I like him a lot.
Audience question here. The 60s aesthetic lets Star Trek Continues look both forward and backward in time. How has this informed your portrayal of Kirk?
Wow. What a great question. Well, I would point back to my answer about wanting to make him more relatable. You know, I don't know about you, Russell, but I don't always make the right choice. You know, I don't always have the right answer. I don't always do the right thing. I don't always say the right thing. And I think that one of the things that I wanted to bring to the character was to make him struggle more with certain dilemmas and maybe even make some mistakes. And in fact, I don't know, hopefully you saw episode 4, The White Iris?
Yes.
The whole premise of that episode was that Captain Kirk isn't all squeaky clean with no regrets. He harbors, and deep within him, he hides a great deal of shame and remorse and pain about choices that he made and relationships from his past. And they come flooding to the surface to haunt him, so to speak. And he's got to deal with them. And we got hundreds of emails from fans after episode 4 saying, "Oh my gosh, this episode I related to so much." And it showed, because it showed a side of Kirk that he struggles with decisions he's made and relationships from his past and love that he's lost. And you never saw that side of him so much. And that's one thing that I wanted to do, was bring a side of Kirk that's more relatable, that people can go, "Oh my gosh, I know how that feels. Oh my gosh, that's what I'm dealing with."
I know you can't sell the farm or say much more of anything. Is there anything about Trump in the last 3 episodes of Star Trek?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And you know what? I'm going to take this moment to say something about my opinion. I don't think Star Trek was as much preachy as it was thought-provoking. I'll give you an example. let's take the immigration issue, for instance. There is no solid right side and wrong side. There are valid arguments on both sides of that issue, are there not? There are absolutely valid arguments on both sides of this issue. And the best Star Trek takes an issue and presents the different sides of an issue. And it may take a position to a degree, but it more often than not makes the audience think. It's a thinking man's show. They don't just come on and go, this is bad and this is good, and you guys are bozos for thinking this, so why don't you believe like us, so then you'll be smart and accepted. Well, that's not. Where's the tolerance in that? Where's the growth or the learning in that? I believe that Trump, for all of his flaws, represents legitimate positions on different sides of the issues that may differ from yours. It may differ from mine. But there are clearly legitimate sides of every issue. And so no, we're not about to take. Oh my gosh, can I tell you a funny story? Did you see episode 7?
Don't do this to me, Vic. I've been working. No, I haven't.
Okay, well, you know what, Russell? You're a bad fan. You need to go. What was the last one you saw? How far have you seen?
I think I've seen the first 5.
Oh my God, Russell. Everybody out there listening to you right now, can you believe this? Can you believe Russell has not seen 6, 7, or 8?
By the time people hear this show, I will have seen them.
Okay, well, I want you to go and do that right away, and then I want you to drop me a message and tell me what you thought of the latest 3 episodes, okay?
Okay, I'll do that. Yeah.
But without trying to, without spoiling anything, Russell, episode 7 literally is about a Starfleet officer becoming the first female starship captain. And the whole question of the episode is, of course, it's appropriate and right to consider a female for a starship captain position, but not just any female. Just because you're a woman and it would be nice to have a woman captain doesn't mean that you're the right woman for the position. Now, this episode was released in September of last year, when we were all looking at the possibility of a woman president. And do you know something? Our story was crafted so well that we had some people write us and say, I can't believe that you made an episode supporting Hillary Clinton. And guess what, Russell? We also got just as many emails saying, I can't believe you made an episode against Hillary Clinton. Do you see my point? My point is that our episode was so closely, we so carefully crafted the episode that we left the audience to think for themselves. We didn't come down on either side of the issue. But we crafted it in such a way that depending on who you were in the audience watching it, you could take it either direction.
Well, Vic, our time is at an end. Man, I ever had a good time here today.
Me too, man.
You've given a gift to Star Trek fans, to me personally. I thank you so much for your unbelievable contribution. Star Trek truly does continue. Altruism at its finest, Vic.
Thank you. Thank you. And I just want to say I represent 30 or 40 people in my cast and crew who have all labored so tirelessly to make these episodes everything they could be. And it means the absolute world to us, dare I say the galaxy to us, that people have been enjoying them the way they are. And please keep watching, because these last 3 episodes are going to round it up and wrap it up in style.
Vic, for the audience, how can they get in touch with you, ask you questions? What's the best website for them to visit?
Well, www.StarTrekContinues.com is our website. You can watch all of our episodes there. You can watch lots of behind-the-scenes features and stories about the creation of the episodes and building of the sets. You can take a set tour. You can even do a 3D virtual tour where you can walk around the sets and look all around as if you're standing on them. And you can also send emails there. Check us out on Facebook, Star Trek Continues. Like us on Facebook. Join our page and spread the good news to anybody that you know that might enjoy a series.
Vic, Captain Kirk, it's been great chatting with you. Thank you so much for being a guest on the program.
My pleasure, Russell. Live long and prosper, my friend. Go watch those last 3 episodes, and let's talk again soon.